Today we're going to be talking about YouTuber Dfpolis, his ideas on the nature of the laws of nature, and how he believes that they prove that God exists. Now, normally when you're talking about the laws of nature and proving that God exists, we're talking about some kind of fine-tuning argument. But his ideas are different. Howdy folks, this is your friendly neighborhood Theophage. Okay, for those of you who don't know Dfpolis, I've left a link to his channel in the underbar. Go check out his page, go watch his videos, it's good stuff. He lays out what he calls open philosophy. These are his beliefs on the nature of things in a series of videos that are interesting and well laid out. He moves from topic to topic in a concise, rational, and logical manner. Having said all that, I think he's wrong. There are three particular claims that Dennis makes during this series of videos on the laws of nature that I think are incorrect. The first is that the laws of nature are not properties of matter itself, do not arise from the properties of matter itself, that they represent a separate immaterial reality that is both logically prior to matter and is the cause of how matter behaves. The second point is that the laws of nature are intentional, that they show intention. This is kind of like thoughts in the human mind. Thoughts refer to something other than themselves. If I think of an elephant, my thought refers to something outside of my head, an actual elephant. Dennis claims that laws of nature are similar in that sense, in that they also refer to something other than themselves. For example, the law of conservation of energy does not refer to the law itself, but it refers to the conservation of energy, something other than the law. Finally, Dennis says that not only are the laws of nature immaterial and intentional, but they also directly point to the existence of God because they are constant. He says that if the laws are constant, then there must be some law holding that laws are constant. But if there is a law that holds that laws are constant, then there must be another law holding that the law of laws is constant, etc., into an infinite regress, and that God is the solution to that problem of infinite regress.
There is some reality which is immaterial and which guides natural processes. This reality is the laws of nature. Of course, materialists hate the notion that there can be something specifically immaterial in reality. They will argue that the laws of nature are actually properties of matter. Let's examine this claim. Certainly, the laws of nature are not properties like other properties. Something like color, for example, can take on different values. Some things can be red, others blue or green. Something like length can be longer or shorter. We can weigh more or we can weigh less. Every property that we know about can take on different values. But the laws of nature are universal. They apply equally to all matter. Therefore, they are not properties like any other properties.
Dennis notes that the properties of objects can have different values, and that the laws of nature are universal, that is, the same for all applicable objects. This makes it sound like the laws can't be properties because they don't vary from object to object, but that really isn't a good objection. The first reason being because a property doesn't need to have a whole range of values. Something could be a binary property, either a thing has it or it doesn't. We could say that charged particles, for example, have the property of electric charge and thus give rise to laws having to do with electric charge, and non-charged particles don't have that. But we can take that even further with the fact that physicists consider things like electrons to all be completely identical. Any given electron may be in a different quantum state than another one, but other than quantum state there is no difference between two electrons. Thus, any physical laws arising from the properties of electrons would naturally be universal to all of them. Lastly, as a materialist, if I want to say that the laws of nature are properties of matter, must I be confined to saying that they are the properties of individual pieces of matter? Or can I simply say that the laws of nature are properties of the material universe itself? If they are properties of the material universe itself, then it is no wonder why all matter within the universe must obey them universally. Then we get to something called Noether's theorem. In 1918, German mathematician Noether showed that conservation laws in nature arise directly from symmetries of matter in the material universe. The laws of conservation of energy and momentum, for example, are due to the fact that space and time have translational symmetry, and the conservation of angular momentum is because space has rotational symmetry. Unlike Dennis's assertion that laws are logically prior to matter and don't arise from properties of matter, it seems that Noether's theorem says he's wrong. Certainly it would be the case that if space and time had different properties, did not have these symmetries, then the laws of nature would be different.
Accordingly, it is generally accepted that the defining characteristic of intentions is their aboutness. They all have some content they are about. So, we may ask, are the laws of nature about anything? And the answer is clearly yes. The law of conservation is about conserving energy. The law of gravity is about how objects are drawn toward each other in virtue of their mass, and so on. So, by the standard analysis of intentionality as aboutness, the laws of nature are definitely intentional.
Throughout his series on the laws of nature, Dennis has warned us not to confuse the laws of nature themselves with the physicist's description and understanding of these laws. It seems that he commits exactly that error here. The reason why the law of conservation of energy seems to be about energy is because he isn't talking about the actual natural law itself, but our mental concept of that law. That mental concept is about yet another mental concept, that of energy. The natural law itself is simply a feature of the material universe, due, according to Noether's theorem, to the translational symmetry of time. Because space-time is this way, matter in space-time behaves a certain way. There is no about in there, except if we confuse the property of the material world with our mental concept of that property. In short, Dennis, I'm afraid you're just plain wrong. But if you viewed the laws of nature correctly as being properties of the material universe, you probably wouldn't have been as prone to make that mistake.
The reason we needed the meta in the first place is that the law of conservation of mass energy, for example, conserves mass energy and not a law. We need a law which conserves laws. But if it doesn't conserve itself, then it leads to another meta law, and so on. So what we actually need is a law which conserves other laws and also conserves itself. Something which keeps the laws of nature in operation and also conserves itself in being fits the description of what we call God. This is how the persistence of the stone leads us through the laws of nature to the existence of God.
Once again, the problem of infinite regression that Dennis describes is due to an improper understanding of what the laws of nature actually are. If they are merely entities that are distinct from the properties of matter and the material universe, as well as being about something other than themselves, then of course you'd need a meta law to refer to the law, and so forth. And of course, once again, we see God used as a stopgap for reasoning gone awry, rather than recognizing that the reasoning requires the stopgap because it is flawed to begin with. If, as I contend, the laws of nature are due to the properties of matter and the material universe, then the only thing required to keep them constant is the notion that a thing is itself and not something else. If it is itself, then it must have its properties. Does it make any sense to require God to have a meta rule over him to keep him consistent with his own nature and properties? If not, then why would the material world require something to keep it consistent with its own nature and properties? There simply is no infinite regression to need to invent a deity to fix. I look forward to any responses. Thanks.